So might be repeating things which I've said in the past, but every year we learn, especially this time that I've been encouraged that we learn about Beis HaBechira, about the Mikdash. So here I've chosen a Mishnah, which is actually not in the regular Mishnayos of Midas. It's in the beginning of Seder Taharos, which describes the 10 Kedushas, the 10 levels of Kedusha in Eretz Yisrael, and how it goes step by step. So I've underlined the specific areas. So we have the first Kedusha is Kedushas Eretz Yisrael, from where Bikurim would be brought, and there's going to be also subject to, I guess, Trumas Amayas, which are not mentioned here. Then we've got within Eretz Yisrael walled cities. So they have a specific halacha that a mitzoira, a person who has tzoras, would have to be banished from such a city, and some other details. And then we've got Yerushalayim. Within the walls of Yerushalayim, we've got a din that there are 2 levels of korbanos, Kodoshim Kalim and Kodoshim Kodoshim. Kodoshim Kalim may be eaten anywhere in Yerushalayim, whereas Kodoshim Kodoshim are limited to be eaten only by the Kohanim, only in the Azara. But Kodoshim Kalim, like Korban Pesach, could be eaten anywhere in Yerushalayim within the wall. So that's this Lefnim in HaChaima. Then we have Har HaBayis. Within Yerushalayim, you have an area known as Har HaBayis, Temple Mount, which we're going to spend some time discussing. Within Har HaBayis, we've got a section known as the Chayil, which is like a fencing within the Har HaBayis, and within that fence is known as the Chil, and that's the area where a goy would not be allowed to enter. And then we have Ezos Noshim, which, of course, as Noshim are able to come in, but if a person was Tomei, and they're told that day, the sun hasn't set, so it's called the Tvul Yom, so they wouldn't be allowed to enter Ezos Noshim. Then we've got the Ezos Yisrael, that even if they finish the 7 days of Tumah or whatever, and they've gone to Mikveh, but then they'd have to bring a Korban, so they wouldn't be allowed to enter Ezos Yisrael. Then we've got the next level, we've got Ezos Kohanim, we've got a strip where the Israelim wouldn't come there unless they've got to do a Korban. Then we've got the area between the Ulam and the Mizbeach, which means the Ulam is the foyer of the actual building of the Beis HaMikdash. Between that and the Mizbeach, where it says that a person, a Kohen even, who is a Baal Mum, would not be allowed to enter there. Then we've got the actual building, the Heichal, where you wouldn't be allowed to enter unless you'd wash your hands and feet, like from the tier. And then we've got the Kodesh Kadoshim, which, as you know, that's only the Kohen Gadol enters there, and only on Yom Kippur. I'm just wondering, the one whose number finishes 8063, if you don't mind, are you able to mute your phone? There's a background noise there, I think. Okay. If you want to ask a question, for sure, no worries, you can interrupt. Unless the hostess could stop or mute everyone besides the speaker. Let's move on. Okay, so here we have a map of Eretz Yisrael, and as you know the map. This is the northern border, this is southern border, and here is Yerushalayim, somewhere over here, fairly central. Now, Yerushalayim is in a region of a lot of mountains. It's quite remarkable that this area over here, around Yerushalayim, is quite mountainous, and just beyond that, where Tel Aviv, etc., that's quite level, quite flat in comparison. And we have a passage, Yerushalayim Horim Sovivla. So that's where we have Yerushalayim, and that's going to be significant. You'll see in the next slide, understanding the significance of what we call topography of Yerushalayim. So this I copied from a sefer, and this is describing the topography, the land where Yerushalayim was at the time of David HaMelech, etc., till the end, or till the time of Chizkiyahu Melech Yehuda. So what we have here is this small strip. I want to explain to you this rectangle. This is the Har HaBayis as it is now, where it's 250 meters across, 500 meters from north to south. This wall where I'm pointing here, that is the Kosel HaMa'aravi. We have access normally somewhere around over here. You go into the tunnels, you can go along all the way here, along the tunnels till the end here. If you go out of there, I think you come to a place called Via della Rosa or something like that. You smack into the Christian quarter of the old city. That's somewhere over here. This over here is the Ravaha Yehudi. Down over here is the Ravaha Armenian quarter. Don't ask me where the Muslim quarter is, I don't remember. But anyway, so this is the 500 meters. That means the whole of Yerushalayim is just on this hilltop. The whole of Yerushalayim was also only about 500 meters, which is therefore being so small, and the width is it was like a very small place, and be that as it may, when you visit the Eretz Yisrael, when you go to Kidron Valley, they say this is the area where you'll be visiting. When you finished and you want to go back to the bus, well, you'll be going down here, and then you come to a gate, and then the bus will go this way. It will come, bring you to go around, and it'll bring you to where if you'd walk, let's say on Shabbos, you'd be coming from, let's say, from Geula. You come over here from Geula to up there, north, and then you'd go through, come to Shah Shechem, if you're brave enough, and you walk through the Arab Shuk, come through there, and then you'd come along and you'd come to the coast. That's going to be your movements. Now, as I just said, original Yerushalayim was only south of Har HaBayis. All the rest was added at a later stage. So what we know as the Ir Atika, the old city, was expanded in the times of Chizkiyahu or later, whereas in the times of David HaMelech, etc., it wasn't populated over here. The population of Yerushalayim was just down here, and Yerushalayim being on this hilltop, and it's surrounded by ravines, by deep valleys. This is the Nahal Kidron. This is the Kidron Valley, which is still a ravine now. And then if you go to the east over here, that's where the Har HaZeisim is, where there's now lots of Kvarim. And when they would do the Pora Aduma, they would do it on Har HaZeisim, and it would be facing, you'd be able to look from the Har HaZeisim all the way through to the entrance of the Heichal, which is over here on the east, and it was in view of the Heichal. That was the Har HaZeisim. Right. What's also significant in my mind is the fact that Yerushalayim, being a very strong city, in the sense that any enemy would have to climb uphill in order to get into Yerushalayim. So in this way, it was a very strong city, very impenetrable by a regular enemy. As I was saying, here's the Nahal Kidron. On the other side was a valley, a ravine called Gei Ben Hinnom. It sounds very inviting. So you had these ravines on both sides, which made it so well protected. What happened then, which is very significant, is that toward the end of Pius Rishon, quite a while back, we had Chizkiyahu Melech Yehuda. And at that time, Sancherev had exiled the 10 tribes from the northern part of Israel. And many of the refugees from that exile came to the south, and they converged upon Yerushalayim. There was no place in Yerushalayim to accommodate them all. They became a whole encampment, a whole settlement over here on the west of Hanabais, the west of Yerushalayim. And then, at a further stage, the ravine between these two hills was kind of bridged over. And as you may know, when you go to the coastal, there's those excavations at the side there, and you see it's much, much lower than the level which we see today. You know, here you come out of the coastal, and you see that it's going uphill to the Rav Yehudi. That's true. But in between, there's no ravine. That's because that ravine has been bridged over artificially. And this whole square also, this whole rectangle, inside that compound is flat. It's been built up. It's imposed upon the shelves of the rock, but that's flat. And inside, so let's come back. You come to the bus, and on the way, you look to your left. Over here, you can see there's some pools over here, etc. It's it's like 2-3 floors down, and over here there's the southern wall of the Arabais, and there's some kind of double gate. You can see it's lit up. But in the times when living would come through there, so they would have to go up from that level to the built-up level, about, I don't know how many steps, 50 steps or more, to go from the ground level on the outside, which is much, much lower than the ground level inside, which is, as I say, it's all artificially built up. That's on the south side. Okay, the weak point of Yerushalayim was that it doesn't have any natural flow of water, and the only natural water is the Gichoin, the Gichoin of spring, which fills the Shiloach pool, and that's over here somewhere on the east. Now, you can see in the next slide, this the city is besieged. They've got water supplies, they can withstand the siege for a long time. But if there's no water, they can't last very long. And so this was their weak point. And you'll see that they built special strong fortifications around this pool, which is much lower than the city's walls, but they built kind of a tunnel connecting so that the enemy should not be able to isolate the water supply from the people inside. So we're going to see in the next slide, it's going to be more like going from the side what this would be. Now there we are. We've got here a drawing of Yerushalayim. As you see, it's the same layout. We've got to the north of Yerushalayim. We've got the Arabais, and then towards the south we've got this long narrow strip, which is.
So Raaskin, I don't think we can hear you so well. I'm not sure if it's just to do with me, but I think a little bit unclear.
Can you hear better now?
Yeah, better now. Thanks.
Okay. So then, we're going to the south, and and then this next area, that's the expansion of Yerushalayim. As I say, was added in the times of Chizkiyahu Melech Yehuda. And here I'm pointing out to the Shiloach. This fortification is built around the Shiloach to protect it from the enemy, cutting off that water supply from the enemy. Although I'm just wondering whether this little pool over here is meant to be describing that. All right, there's a approximately over here. And if you do go to Eretz Yisrael and you have the time, I very much recommend you go to the excavations. Instead of taking the bus after the coastal, make a left about 20 meters to your left, and you come to the excavations called Bir David. You can have a guided tour. And they take you down this area, which is now not populated. There is an Arab village called Kidron, which is inspired by Shiraya, and the fascinating excavations here find from the times of the Raising English, and you can actually also wade through the pool of the Shiraya part of the floor. So that's somewhere over here, and on surface, the Simchas Beis Hasha'eva, they would draw the water from the Shiraya, and then bring it up northwards to the Shar Chulda, one of these gates, and they bring it to the Zora, one of the gates on this side, and you can see it in a moment. It's called Shar Hamayim, the gate of the water gate. That's where they brought in the water for the pouring in the Mizbeach. We'll come to more details. Okay. So, as I said before, that the dimensions of the Har HaBayis today are 500 meters by 250 meters. In the times of the Mishnah described it as being actually 500 amos square, which is approximately 250 amos. So about 250 meters square. So the length from north to south is twice the length what we are familiar with from Mishnah. The width is actually from east to west is pretty much accurate, same as it was. This wall over here, the west, that is the western wall of the Har HaBayis, of the outer enclosure, and as we discussed before, this is where people would be able to visit today. It's outside the Har HaBayis. The general position of most costumes that you're not allowed to enter Har HaBayis. We know that there are those groups today who are dafka and making a point of entering Har HaBayis, but certainly not generally accepted way in halacha. And you look at the layout of this space. So here's the east. I mentioned before that if you're in Har HaZeisim, you'd be looking to the mikdash, you'd be looking over these walls, and you'd be able to look all the way through till the Heichal. Because when the major problem, the Paraduma, would sprinkle of its blood in the direction of the Heichal, they have to be able to see all the way through. That's on the east. But as mentioned before, the main population is down south. And that's reflected in the layout of the area. Where we have to the south of this area, we have the largest space, because that's where the main human traffic would come from the city down south. Whereas the other side is a minimal amount of traffic. And also, if you notice, there's five entrances. So there's one here, one there. Yeah? The south is 2 entrances, and that's because, again, that's to reflect the fact that the main traffic will be coming here. So there was 2 entrances to accommodate the traffic. I don't know whether it was a one-way system. I'm not familiar. What I do know, by the way, is that where people would come in and they would make the whole circuit, come in, and then on their way out, they would continue going all the way around, and then go back that way. They would go what's called anti-clockwise. The Goyish way going around something is to go clockwise, and the Yiddish way is to go anti-clockwise, which is called Derech Yomin, which turns to the right. Imagine you are coming towards this block. You're going to try to go to the left or to the right. So if you make a right, so then you're going to continue anti-clockwise. That's the way Yidden would go around, and they would visit, come in, and then continue clockwise all the way around until they came back to where they came from, and go back to wherever they came. Okay. There are 3 bodies of Sanhedrin which are located in this complex. We've got here one small Sanhedrin at the entrance of the Har HaBayis in the east, and another one at the entrance of the Eves Noshim. That's what these symbols are, implying like a crescent, because the like a semicircle, because the main Sanhedrin would be sitting in a semicircle so that the Dayanim could see one another. And then in front of them were rows of Talmidim. And that's the idea of the symbol. And then we've got the third body, and that is in the area called Mishkas Hagozis. And again, that's already, there's an entrance from the Azora proper to enter over there. Let's go on to the next slide. Unless you want to stop me and ask me some more details, otherwise I'll just go on. So here is a artist's impression. So here again we've got the two entrances on the south side, one on the east, and one on the west. Sorry, no, not the west. This is the east. That's the west, and the city would have been down there. And so Harazation would be here somewhere. No. Harazation is in the east. And this is the north. That is the east. So that's the south. Okay? South. This is the north, and that's the west. And that would be over here. That's the Coastal Hamarati. And here we have the. I guess it's built this chamber for the Sanhedrin to be able to be seated there. The artist's impression, and we've got all of these steps because as you went further in, the floor level became higher. So the Ezras Noshim is higher, and then the Ezras Yisrael is higher, and then the Heichel is higher, and there's the steps to enter the complex which reflected that. Let's move on. Okay, now I've got here two drawings. I've taken the area of the Azores into two halves. This area is the Ezras Noshim. This is the area where the Simchas Beis HaShe'eva would take place. And at that occasion, there would be the galleries, and the ladies would be at the top of the galleries, and the men would be down on the floor, and there would be the Anshe Hasidim, Anshe Ma'aser dancing in the middle. This is also the area where on 1 to 7 years of Hakel, there would be a platform built here, and the Melech would read the Sefer Torah at this somewhere over here, and the people would be listening. We've got these 4 squares in the corners. These are special each is a separate chamber. One is for the Nazirim, one is for Nazir, so when they've been purified, and when they finish their term, they come to the Beis HaMikdash to bring their karbanos. So they would be in one of these chambers. One chambers of the Lishkas Eitzim is where there would be the piles of wood were used for the Mizbeach. And there would be Kohanim who were disabled, weren't able to do the Avodah, so they were given the privilege of being able to sort out the wood. And so that's called Lishkas Eitzim. There was a Nazir, Lishkas Metziroi, and there was one which was a chamber. This is where they would have the storage of oil, and people brought karbonos, so they were also accompanied with oil, and that needed to be paid for, and there was a whole like a kiosk or whatever you want to call it to sell the oil to be used. The adequate hechsher for the Beis HaMikdash, and that would be, if I'm not mistaken, it's in this chamber over here. One of these chambers had a mikveh. Then we have these 15 steps. So 15 steps were built in kind of relating to the Shir HaMalos, this 15 Mizmorim, starting with Shir HaMalos. And inspired by that, there's 15 steps built over here. They are circular, semicircle, and the Leviim would stand on these steps. During the Simchas Beis HaShe'eva, they would stand here like an orchestra, playing their own instruments. Not only of the Simchas Beis HaShe'eva, the rest of the time, the Leviim would be in the main Azara. Now in fact, there's these 15 steps. Each step is half an amma. That means that the height of this floor, the height at the top of the stairs, was 7.5 ammas different, which is a bit taller than the average room. And that allowed for, on the side where those arrows are, either side, was an entrance to a storage area where the Leviim kept their musical instruments. That was their storage area for their shir. underneath there. So this is the, as I said, this is the Edos Noshim, which is like a corridor in a sense, a forecourt before coming into the main Azara. There you have the Mizbeach, which we'll see on the next slide. Here we have the Ezras Yisrael. This is all of 11 amas from east to west. It's 11 amas. That means about 5.5 meters. And from side to side, it was a bit more than about 50 meters, 52 meters. It really wasn't a very large area. And a Yid would come, want to daven, wanted to bow down. That would be their place available. And I suspect that the rest of the time, there would be either in Noshim or in Har HaBayis, etc., or elsewhere. I can't imagine too many people being in the Eretz Yisrael at one time. Of course, we know that there are times there was a miracle, but I don't think that was on a daily basis. Talks about when they say they Viduri and in Kippur, so they made a miracle that when they're saying their own confession, that no one else should hear what they're saying. Okay, here we have the Lishkas HaGozis, which we mentioned before. The Supreme Sanhedrin would be seated here, and part of the chamber is in Kodesh, part of it is in Choil. So the part which is in Choil was to allow that the Sanhedrin should be able to be seated, because the part which is Kodesh, you have to remain standing. No one's allowed to stand, to just sit in the Azora inside Malchei Beis David. We also have here a chamber which is called Lishkas HaEitz or Lishkas Parhedrin, which is the chamber of the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol, before each Yom Kippur, had to be separated from his family for 7 days. And basically, from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, he was in quarantine for 7 days, and he would be practicing at the Avodah, and also obviously preparing mentally and spiritually to do the Avodah of Yom Kippur. That was over here. So it was called, it used to be called Lishkas HaEitz, and then became called Lishkas Parhedrin. The reason for this name change, an eitz is a tree which lasts long, and the Kohen Gadol has got to do with the Inyan of Arichas Yomi. You know the whole thing with the Ari Mikvot, and the Kohen Gadol, his job is to make sure that people have Arichas Yomi, with tefillah, etc. Came the second Beis HaMikdash, and there was a time where the position of Kohen Gadol was up for auction, whoever paid more money. So there were even who were perhaps not the greatest tzaddikim, but they very much wanted to have this, even though they knew that if they would not be worthy, they wouldn't survive the following year. And still they've spent enormous amounts of money to be able to have that privilege. The Kohen Gadol, and as a result, we had a very sad situation that the Kohen Gadol chamber was each time was a new guy, and it became almost like a government office, where these government offices, there was elections, etc., reappointments, and there's a lot of shifting, turnover of personnel. And that's where the name Lishkas Parhedrin, instead of being called Lishkas HaEitz, it started being called Lishkas Parhedrin. It's like a chamber of a government officer, which keeps on changing. That's okay. Then we have the various other chambers, which they had a chamber where they had salt. Each korban had to have salt with it, and we had Lishkas HaParvo, etc. For the skins. We have these various chambers serving various functions for the Avodah in the Beis HaMikdash. One of these chambers is where they would make the Lechem HaPonim on a daily basis. Sorry, not Lechem HaPonim, the Chavitim, sorry. Okay, let's go on to the... so here we have this artist's impression of that same area. We've got those 4 chambers, and then it's created here this chamber for this, I guess, for the minor Sanhedrin over there. And there you have a mikveh. I mentioned before, one of them had a mikveh. And we're going to see in the next slide how here there's storage for the oil. And here we have the part of the places where the Nazirim, when they would bring their korbanos, they would have cooking facilities to cook the flesh of the korban and to eat it there. That's over here. And I guess this is the Lishkas HaEitz, and that's why these piles of wood where they would sort out the wood. Let's see the next slide. Okay, so this is coming back to the older drawing, which is where we have the Azora, and the Mizbeach, this very central feature, obviously, the Korbanos are brought, and the Mizbeach is 32 amos square. Imagine it's about the size of the whole of Beis Lubavitch. That's the approximate size area. I'm just talking about just the square. Separately, this was 32 amos, and this ramp is also 32 amos, but it overlaps, like 2 amos of the ramp are overlapping the Mizbeach proper. That's over here. And these rings are for securing the animals at the time of the shkita. And we have, when the animals were after the shkita, they would be skinned. So to skin them, there would be hooks with hooks to be able to string the animals for the skinning. Once the animals were skinned, then they would be taken to these tables and they would be cut up into specific pieces. And actually, for Korban Oila, there was a very specific manner how to cut them up into various limbs. And there's a whole protocol for a sheep. How many kohanim? Let's say you have to have 8 kohanim, each one carrying this and this part of the animal. And when it came to a cow, you'd have to have, let's say, about 13 kohanim, each one, this one carrying this part, this one carrying that part. There was a very specific way of cutting up a Korban Oila, the way they did, and that would be done all over here. This was called Beis HaMikvachaim or Lichkas HaMedichim, etc. This is all over here. This is, as I said, this is the Mizbeach. Here we've got the steps leading up. There are 12 steps over here. And then we've got here the foyer called the Ulam. See, it says the Ulam. And the Ulam has a very large gate, very large entrance on it. It's 20 amos wide and it's 40 amos high, which is a very, very large entrance. The next gate, which is the entrance of the Heichal, that has a set of double doors, 2 sets of double doors actually. And this was 10 amos wide and 20 amos high. This is really a very, very large entrance over here. And once you come in here, you've got the Heichal, and here you have the menorah on the north, also the menorah on the south, and the shulchan on the north, and we've got a small mizbeach, and then we've got the curtain, which is separating between, like a parochis, separating between the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and then we've got the Kodesh HaKadoshim where in Bais Rishon there was the luchas, in the Oren, and towards the end of Bais Rishon we know that the Oren was put into hiding, and so there was a stone called the Eben Shasiyah, which was inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim. In the first Beis HaMikdash, these 2 areas were separated by a wall with a one curtain. Second Beis HaMikdash, they didn't know whether the thickness of the wall belonged to the kedusha of the inside or belonged to the kedusha of the outside. So to avoid this problem, to solve this problem, they put up 2 curtains, an amma apart, and the Kohen Gadol would come through the curtains, he would enter that way. And like this, this was 20 amos on this side and 40 amos on that side, and the area between the curtains remained unresolved, and that was known as the amma traxin, etc. Okay. Let's move on. So here we have the artist's impression. Now, the artist has also included shading due to the sunlight. So in the morning, the sun is coming from the east, and so the shade is over here. Now that's significant because the Korban Talmud, which we learned about last week in Chumash. So in the morning, they would shecht the Korban, they would shecht it on the west side, so that it should be more in view of the sun. And in the afternoon, they would shecht it on the east side, so it should be more in the view of the sun, which was setting in the west. And Mishnayim Layoim, they should be kind of facing the Yoim, which means the sun, which is showing the change of the day. We have here, going back to that chamber I told you before, this is the room where they stored where they sold the oils, and that's, so the artist is putting here barrels of storage of oils inside this chamber. There are different opinions about the steps, whether the steps were just straight half an amo each, or there were steps an amo and See this, here the steps are much deeper. 1 and Amma and 3 Amas, Amma 3 Amas, and the Amma 4 Amas. That's why the way many Mepharshim learn. But Amma does not learn that way, and that's what this artist has drawn over here, just regular steps. On the steps we've got the rises are either half an Amma, and the treads are a half an Amma. The rise means the height, difference in height. The tread is the difference in width. So it's a half an Amma each. And as a result, the 12 So here we have an aerial view of the Mizbeach. Now, if you say Ezum Koyman in the morning, you remember the words Maruch G'dolo, Maruch Shnia Shaktoires, etc. So we have every day they would make at least two bonfires, so to speak. The Maruch means a layout of wood to create a fire. There's lots of burning of carbonates going on. So we've got a Maruch, one Maruch here. Wood, which was prepared for making a fire, and we've got a separate one, second marocha, which was from which they would take the coals for the Ketores. Every day the Ketores was done inside in a small mizbeach, but the burning coals for the burning of that Ketores would be scooped every day, every morning from here. So Kohen would come up here with a scoop coals from this maruch or shnia shofteres. You bring the burning embers inside, you put them on the small mizbeach, and then he will scatter the teresh on them. This over here in the middle is known as the tapuach. There's like a pile of burnt out, and the korbanos would be burnt to a cinder. So you've got all that ash. So they would make it into a pile. Every day there would be a lot of avoid of trumas hadeshna, taking off a bit of the ash, and there would be a little bit would be put over here, and it would be absorbed derech nes in the floor, and the rest of it was carted out to Chutz Yerushalayim, and it was somewhere outside where no one was living there, etc. Now the Mizbeach is 10 amos high. Kronis, the corners are 1 amma, so the height of the Mizbeach is 9 amos high. Now the korbanos, one of the essential parts of the korban is the blood of the korban goes on the Mizbeach. Now, some of the korbanos, are meant to be to the upper half of the Mizbeach. Some of the korbanos, their blood should go on the lower half of the Mizbeach. And as Rashi mentions in Chumash, there's a red strip going around the Mizbeach to separate, to differentiate between the damim and yoinim and the damim tachtonim, between the upper and the lower sprinkling of blood. Now, if I'm to my shoulders on 3 amos high, and halfway up the Mizbeach is 5 amos, I cannot reach to sprinkle blood in the upper half of the Mizbeach. And for this reason, the Kevesh has a side ramp. And the round Mizbeach, about 6 amos off the ground, which is almost the height of a regular room, there is a bridge, a walkway. That's called the soibu. And that is going all the way around this bridge, a walkway. And the Kohen could come, and that's what we see every in Ezra Kohen. Oliver Kevesh, Fonala Soive, goes up the Kevesh and then makes a right turn to the Soive. Fonala Soive turns toward the Soive, and then he's now by the Droimus Mizrochis, there's sprinkled with blood in the corner there. Mizrochis, Tvoinis, Marovis, Droimus. And then the Shirei Hadom, it says in the Mishnah, the remainder he's going to pour into this over here in the bottom, the Yisoid Deroimi. It's on the southern Yisoid, he was meant to be pouring the remainder of the blood over there. How did he get from 6 amos off the ground? How did he get to the? So there must have been some kind of ramp to get down, not necessarily getting back to the Kevesh, but bringing him down and then being able to make a U-turn sprinkle the remainder of the blood on the, to pour the remainder of the blood down here to the side. Let's move on. So here we have an artist's impression of the Mizbeach. There you've got those two tables mentioned before. Here's the ramp, and here is depicted this side ramp, which brought the Kohen to the Soviet, and that's this narrow strip, which was an arm wide. I guess if the Kohen was a little bit unsteady on his feet, it wouldn't be such a wise thing for him to be walking along this, which is a mamash, just an arm wide, which is not very wide at all. This strip over here is the idea of that strip is separated between the damim and yonim, the damim, the upper, the bloods on the upper half of the Mizbeach or the lower half of the Mizbeach. And here we've got two fires. That's Merocha Gedolah and Merocha Shniya Shel Ktoros. And then we've got this is known as the Tapuach. Tapuach, as you know, may be an apple. The word Tapuach means actually, it means a lot of bloated, swollen. And so you had this pile of ash, and this was seen as actually as a compliment to the Mizbeach. It should be seen that there's a lot of karbonos that have been brought, and look at that massive pile of ash. Obviously, it wasn't as geometrically beautiful as this design is, but that's okay. And here is, for some reason, there's an animal on the top of the Mizbeach. Not sure what it's doing there. It does give you a sense of proportion there. I was just looking at yesterday's Chumash, thinking about on the Sukkot, you had a phenomenal amount of animals just from Karbonos Tzibur. You had 13 bulls and 14 sheep and a couple of other animals. That to burn all of those, and they were all Karbonos Olah, which means all the flesh was burnt. So it's just an enormous amount which had to be burnt on the Mizbeach. Just struck me how much it is. Right, so there we have again, we've got the Mizbeach looking out from the other angle, and this time the artist has drawn it going to the Mizbeach, but not exactly true. We understand that it comes down, but not necessarily touching the Mizbeach. There we have a window. That was with some karbonos, especially on birds. If they were disqualified, they could be put in there and left to kind of for overnight, and then they would be taken and discarded for machne, etc. We have here also the kier. Now that's the position of the kier, where it's any kohen before he does the avodah has to come and wash his hands and feet from the kier, and that was specifically placed somewhere parallel to the kevesh. We have here also a manhole, and I'll teach us that the pouring of the wine and the water was done on this corner over here. You can see those little holes in the top there. They were like they were built-in pipes inside the cast, whatever it was, a kind of cement, lead and stone or whatever. Inside there were built-in pipes, and the wine would go all the way down. And it says that once in 70 years, once in 70 years, they would send an agile, slim kohen. They'd go down into this manhole, and they would take out cakes, slabs of dried out wine. That was down over here. Separately, so we've got here, it's quite interesting how the plumbing works. We've got one plumbing for the wine to come down. No, that's called the shisim. This is the, and then we've got separately, we've got the blood. And the blood would be on this corner at the bottom, and it would drain, and then somewhere along here, which is not so well documented in the regular drawings, there's an amot. There's a canal, and the blood would go into that canal, and then it would go out into Nachal Kidron, and then once it's done its mitzvah, so then it can be used for for mundane purposes. I'm just going to go back to one of the first drawings. We'll just see the Nahal Kidron, where it is in relation to. So as I said before, Nahal Kidron is this ravine on the east side, and this is the east side of the Heichal of the Har. That's the Ezos Noshim on the east, and somehow this blood would go out through from the Azara, and somehow it would be drained. I guess it went first a bit north and then down to the east, and it would come to Nahal Kidron. And the way it's written in Chazal, it would be then sold to people who had vegetable gardens, etc. And it would be sold to them as a fertilizer, because blood apparently is a very, very powerful, so much energy in it. So it's very good as a fertilizer. So they use once something sacred has done its mitzvah, so then it loses its kedusha. It's got a value, and so it would be sold to gardeners to be able to use it for gardening, for their vegetables, etc. And whatever they paid for it would be used for the operating the basic English. Okay, so we've gone through those two drawings of the Mizbeach. Let's move on, see what else we have here. You see there's a drawing to scale. I mean, this was massive, as I said before. This is from the bottom, from one end to the other, was 32 ounces. Which is, as you see before, it's about 16 meters. I mentioned it. Okay, now we're looking at the top. We're looking at this back from the top. So again, we've got here, it's the same drawing. There you can see the holes for the artist has drawn 2 holes. It's also, this is just an artist's impression. Actually, what they had was 1 hole, it's hard to understand, and they used funnels. There were 2 funnels, one for water, one for wine, and the hole at the bottom of the funnels. So there was a wider one for the wine and a narrower one for the water, because wine is thicker. And when they poured the wine and the water at the same time, the different sizes of the holes allowed that the emptying of the funnels of the wine and the water respectively would happen simultaneously. As I say, this wasn't a different size holes in the Mizbeach itself. Rather, there was probably just 1 hole, and in it we could pour the wine and the water through separate funnels, which were different sizes. Here we've got the other hole, which I said before. This is where the blood would be poured. The remainder, after having done the karbonos, the sprinkling on 4 sides of the Mizbeach, then the remainder, Shir Adam Yishefer Chesed Droimi. There's also Yisod Marovi, when the Kohen Goddard would come out from the Kodesh HaKadoshim on Yom Kippur, so then he would come and he would first see the western side, so he would pour the blood on the Kohen Marovi, Yisod Marovi, Shemizbeach. He would pour it from this side as regular karbonos. They would come off the kevesh and come to the Yisod Droimi on the south side. Yeah, so I've finished the list of the series of the pictures. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer. Well, I'm going to close this set of pictures. All right. Okay. I finished a couple of minutes before 9. But, please send me a copy of the recording. I'll take everything out.
Share, very interesting. Yeah, I'll send you the recording. If you want to send me, let me know. Your email.
Diane at thebarbage.uk.com.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you very much.